So tonight's webinar is on the energy of ceremonies and celebrations. And I got inspiration for doing this webinar as my youngest daughter's marriage was approaching. And then we went through the ceremony just a couple of weeks ago. And I was really impressed now that I have, the ability to perceive some finer levels of creation in the form of energy, at what was going on the energetic level in the performance, the organization of, and then the performance of this ceremony, and of course the reception afterwards and everything that happened and the gathering of all the people. And it struck me that when we engage in ceremonies and celebrations, we produce something on the level, of course, of the mind and something on the level of the heart. But the most important thing that's going on is on the subtle level of energy and forming a energy matrix, if you will, that a morphic field is another term that's used to describe it, that relates to that ceremony or that celebration and the people that are involved in it. And of course, what it does for people who are getting married is it literally creates a bond or a reinforcement of the bond that they're already experiencing between themselves. And that bond then interconnects with family members and friends. And so you get this whole morphic field, you get this whole matrix of energetic connections that really make a couple a couple. And it's one of the reasons why we have marriages. There's the secular part of it, you might say the social contract, and there's often a religious contract, which is the till death do we part kind of spiritual, connection on the level of the more superficial value of spirituality, the level of religious belief, and that which has, been blessed, as it were, by God in whatever church, that the ceremony may have taken place in. And then there's a deeper level of connection that is established that is really the important thing, and which is the true spiritual bond that then exists between the people. And that bond can exist, of course, without a wedding ceremony. And many people have gone that route, particularly in the modern age. But weddings are a part of almost all cultures, and every culture that I know of. And they signify that union on the level of spirit, as well as on the level of the body, as well as on the level of the heart and the mind, that is the emotions and the mind. And so these ceremonies produce this morphic field. I'm going to use that term for the rest of the discussion. They create this morphic field, which sustains the purpose of the event then for decades into the future. We have many, many ceremonies and celebrations in our cultures. And they exist, as I said, in virtually all cultures, certainly every culture that I know. There are often prenuptial rites, that is before a marriage takes place. There are certain rather formal things that take place in some families. Then we have our marriages, and then, of course, we have baby showers, and births, of course, are celebrated in various ways. Sometimes in the days after a birth, there is an official celebration, often in a church, but it can also be in a home or a village, wherever one happens to dwell, and whatever the cultural norms are for the society in which one lives. And so oftentimes there's some kind of a birth celebration, maybe a christening. That's a common thing to have happen. And then we celebrate, of course, every year birthdays. Again, that is something that is done in every culture I know of. Birthdays are regarded as very special, sacred in their own way, even though they're often rather secular events with lots of gifts. But they're usually an occasion for the family to get together and to honor the birthday person as a member of not just the family but the whole society, the member of the culture in which the child lives. And so birthdays events are very important. And then certain birthdays often have special significance, celebrated in that way, and that just intensifies or amplifies the effect that is created of everyone coming together and giving blessing to that person. And then we have our rites of passage into adulthood. Virtually every religion has such rites, and many societies have them where they're kind of intermixed with the religion. But in the Jewish tradition, it's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. There's confirmations. Is there a Christian one particularly? I can't remember right at the moment. Confirmation, I think. And so usually there's a rite of passage. Some of them are more secular. There's the coming out parties for usually the girls at some appropriate age, typically 16, but they can be earlier. And such an event, marks the child then as I'm going to just say an adult, and ready for courtship. And so that's one of the things that ensues then. So rites of passage into adulthood are, again, another very important cultural tradition. Graduations are usually celebrated. Certainly they are, large events at universities and colleges and trade schools, and almost any other kind of training academy. They have a graduation ceremony, which marks the achievements of a group of students, and of course the individual students get recognized. But they're huge events, and then of course there's usually after parties with the families or with the friends. So graduations are another big milestone. And again, many of these things, as you can see, are marking milestones in life, achievement at certain levels that are not just the accomplishment, but the inclusion, being the part of. Now you're a member. Say you graduate with a PhD or an MD degree or one of those other higher degrees, and then you become part of a club, so to speak, of graduates, even from those from other universities or colleges that you don't even know. But you're now a graduate. You get to check the box, as they say, on job applications. But it isn't just that. It's that you're now part of a group. You're identified as graduates. And of course, there was a movie, which we all loved, I'm sure, called The Graduate, which was kind of the anti-celebration. It's like the family was celebrating and the kid was kind of lost. And, Dustin Hoffman played the role and didn't really know what he was doing. And anyway, we'll end that one there because the rest of the movie is on a different topic entirely. We often celebrate other milestones in life, like retirements, when people finish with their official career and leave a corporation or an institution. And so usually their career is recognized in some way. There's a joke, something about a watch. I can't remember. You get a watch when you retire. And if you're lucky, you get a retirement plan. So if you're fortunate, I shouldn't say lucky, but if you're fortunate, you get a retirement plan. So retirements are big things. And then we get to the end of life events, the funerals and wakes. I think of a funeral as a more formal celebration, and a wake is a great party. In some cultures, that's a drunken party, but typically it's a way of celebrating a person's life. There's often a picture of them there. Sometimes they are in the casket. There's an open casket services, they'll say, at a funeral. And so that event kind of brings conclusion, not just for the people who continue to live on. Reeves made a comment on the late night show with Stephen Colbert the other day. Colbert asked him, just kind of out of the blue, it had something to do with his apocalyptic movies that he tends to make. And he said, the question was, what happens when the universe ends? And Reeves hesitated just for a moment, and then he said something to the effect that then we know that all those who love us, uh, continue to love us, give forth their love, bring out their love. He said it much better than I just did. I can't remember the exact quotation. I should have written it down. But it reminds us that at funerals, um, we tend to recall the person both in the positive light of how we loved them and cared for them and how they cared for us and things they did for us, and they often particularly in our community, people often tell stories about their experiences with the person who's passed on, but the stories are told with great affection, of course. And so it's can be a very uh, touching thing for those people. But the funeral also is the saying goodbye and giving permission of the deceased person to leave that realm of where they're not connected to their body anymore, but they're still here with us. And some people in the community have had wonderful experiences of that, of being with the people or having the people visit them after they've passed on, and then they have permission, so to speak, to leave. Their job is now done. Their work is recognized. Whatever unfinished work is, thank you. You did what you could on this earth, and so on and so forth. So those are very, very special occasions. And then, of course, we have all our religious and secular holidays. Um, New Year's comes to mind as a secular holiday. It's also a religious holiday in some traditions, but very much a secular holiday in ours, where we just celebrate the fact that we finished one year and we're starting a new one. And we do that with great fanfare, and we stay up till midnight and oftentimes imbibe in all kinds of delightful things. So New Year's is certainly a big one, but then we have the religious ones like Easter and Passover that we've just celebrated. And then we have Memorial Day and Labor Day and all those other days. And some of them are big celebrations and others are much smaller celebrations. But again, they all serve on the energetic level to bind a group together. And even those who have passed on, those who have gone on before us, it binds us all together. Um, in Mexico, they have, what is it? Dias de la Muertes, the Day of the Dead, which is the day in which there was a wonderful movie. Is it Coco? Is that Coco is the movie about the Dias de la Muertes, about being able at that time, the dead are able to cross back over to come back to the earthly plane, not visible, at least not in the usual way, and they are to be honored at that time. And they have an elaborate story that that you have to do. You leave food out for them, and you have a party, and you remember the people. You tell stories about them and that sort of thing, so that those people are able to go on in their evolutionary journey. And it's a very special thing. So it's not just for the people that are living, but it's very much for the people who've passed on. Anyway, a long list of different kinds of celebrations and ceremonies that we engage in to create a beautiful bond between people, and to facilitate not just a membership in a community on the energetic level even, but to promote spiritual evolution. And that's really the whole point of all of this, is that all of these things help our evolution as people, both the people who are celebrated and the people who participate in the celebration, who do the celebrating, if you will. So it's the guests at the wedding as well as the couple that are getting married. And it's certainly the family, particularly the parents and the siblings of those who are getting married. And then there's the best friends, the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and all the other people. All of that is a bonding together. And it's not like on the surface level, everybody loves everybody, because as we all know, usually if there's always a character or two at any wedding who is a bit of an outlier, but that's just part of the family. And in some sense, a healthy family embraces even those whose conduct and whose personalities are not otherwise considered with delight, but they can be lots of fun. And I know that my daughter's wedding, I know of one person in particular, um, and they proved to be the life of the party. They were just great. They were so enthusiastic, and the kind of enthusiasm that in a small group might be a little much, but in the big room with all the people, it was really fun. So it's all contextual on that level, on the surface level, but underneath that is the joy and the love and the being together and the connecting that goes on between people as they share that experience. And at my daughter's wedding, there were several of her former classmates with their young children. And so, there was this generational thing going on with the youngest generation, the newcomers. And then there were the older generation, people like me who, were out there kicking their heels up too. So there was this big extended, in terms of generations, event that was taking place that was bringing everybody together. And some of the older adults were dancing with some of the kids, and it was really cute to watch that happen. But all of that is, again, it's on the level of the mind, the level of the heart. When you're dancing, certainly on the level of the body, and then there's just that energetic union that is taking place, that morphic field that is created at that event or enhanced at that event, that really supports and promotes our personal evolution, our spiritual evolution. So let's see, what else do I need to talk about in terms of celebrations and ceremonies? I guess what I really was coming to was, while we may regard some of these things as either just routine or not of great significance, and we maybe even wonder whether we, really are enthusiastically participating, that we reassess that and look at it in a big picture kind of way. What is this doing, not just for me, but for all of us and for the people that we're honoring, even if we're the ones being honored? What is that doing for all of us, to have the attention of all of those people, the good wishes of all of those people, the heartfelt connection that those people have for us, at least at that time? And which I say only because we know that on the surface level of life, things are often not very smooth. They're not very clear. And there's this, if you can get beyond that and see the big picture, there's a clarity that emerges that makes this really, you get to see how special a ceremony or a celebration really can be. And so I encourage you all, whenever you have the opportunity to celebrate a birthday or a graduation or a birth or any other milestone that people have, or just a holiday celebrate, I shouldn't say just a holiday, and including a holiday celebration, that you enjoy it. So 4th of July, maybe you feel like you want to really do something special, either that's be with more people, family and friends, or take a trip, or just do something that makes the holiday itself special. And I guess that's the message that I wanted to deliver tonight. I have to say, I guess, because I didn't figure out in advance what conclusion I was going to come to. It was just having gone through the experience that I wanted to share with you, just how special, how important celebrations and ceremonies can be for us. So with that, I'll see if there's any comments. Those of you out in cyberspace can use the chat function in Zoom. Just click on the button that says chat, and type in your chat. I don't think there's any way you can speak to us. I haven't figured that one out. Anybody here have anything they want to comment or observe? Or nope. Looks like I'm not seeing any chats pop up here either. So we can get on with. I wanted to let you know that our next webinar will be on June 11th. And the topic of that is how language traps or frees us. And the topic is going to cover nonviolent communication, interrelationship focusing, and clean language. These are different approaches to language, but different studies of how language facilitates our connection with people and our communication with people, or traps us and holds us back and keeps us from effective communication with people. We talk of a connection with people in several different ways. One of them is being present, that is being aware and being right with someone and really paying attention to what they're communicating, what they're feeling, and what their relationship is with us and others. So that's one level. Another level, or another way of looking at connection, is how people express themselves, how they speak. And does that speech facilitate their connection and develop their connection, or does it hold them back? Does it keep them from being able to connect effectively? And obviously, one has to learn quite a bit about how communication unfolds. So rather than just look at one way of looking at communication, we're actually going to look at 3 different ways, and what the effects of those are. You'll find that they're actually, in some ways, though the approaches are different, the outcome is very similar. And it's based on some underlying principles that are very beautiful, very easily learned, and very, very important. So that'll be the topic for June 11th, how language either traps or frees us.